The team, thank you so much for inviting me to this forum. I had promised to come here last year, could not make it. Delighted to be here today. I hear from my learning and development folks that this particular conference is becoming, I guess, a benchmark conference for the learning officers in the country. So good to hear that. I'm wishing the best to you. He asked me to speak on CEO perspective on learning and development, so I put some slides together, and I guess the intention is that after I speak for some time, Kumar will come on stage, and he intends to ask me some questions. He hasn't told me what they are, but hopefully I can answer some of them. Since we have only limited time, I thought I'll just dive right into the presentation straight away. You know, when we talk about learning and development, at least from a CEO perspective, it's very, very important to talk about the business context, because ultimately, you know, when you look at any CEO scorecard, it is all about the output. You know, what will you do on the financials, what will you do in terms of market, what will you do for the customers, yes, what will you do for the employees. That is also an important consideration. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it's an output-driven business scorecard. And when you talk about any business scorecard, the business context becomes very, very important. What I have put up here is as relevant to the insurance industry which I represent, or almost any industry in the Indian context. We have to look at the current state of the economy. I'm told that the number of people who attended the summit has come down dramatically in comparison to last year. I guess reflects what is happening in the economy to some extent. There's a research which shows that when the economy is not doing well, first you cut jobs, but then when you want to cut expenses, the two heads which get cut the most is advertising and marketing and training. So you're seeing the impact of that here. Well, if you look at the Indian context, we have a situation where the GDP growth rate is slowing down, interest rates are high, we have seen the volatility on the FX side. The customers in general are hesitating in a very volatile environment to put their money in long-term investments. They're hesitating to buy, you know, the non-essentials and so on and so forth, which immediately impacts your business context. The Indian government and regulators in general are very, very active. Whenever they see any industry making a lot of money, I think government starts thinking, how can I take some of that money away? And the regulators start thinking that how can they make so much of money? That means the customers are suffering. So how can I take part of that money away? And you can see industry after industry, in India especially, when they start making too much money, first the government comes and snoops it and takes some of the money away in higher taxes, then the tax department does something. Now service tax department seems to be very, very active. And then you have the regulators who come in and do wonderful things, obviously with the aim to improve things for the customer, but invariably it has an impact on the profitability of the industry itself. The industry is degrowing, at least the insurance industry I represent has been degrowing for the last 3 years. And shareholders' expectations remain the same. Ultimately they have put in the money, they expect similar returns to come through. And customer expectations in a digital world where everyone has information on their fingertips, when people know what's happening around them, what's happening around the world, the customer expectations are also increasing day by day. So you are basically faced with an environment which is extremely volatile. It is extremely unpredictable. The expectations are high. And there's a lot of activism on the part of both the government, the regulators, and customers to some extent. You don't like what a company has done, write a letter to the company. You don't like what the company's reply, write to the regulator. You don't like that, write to the media. And people, when I get customer complaints, and in the insurance industry, you do tend to get a lot of customer complaints. Always the last line is, if you don't respond in the right manner to me, I will write to the regulator and I'll write to the media, and then I will actually go in front of the media. So that's the the threat which comes with every mail which you get. But that is the business context we are living in. And what is the role of learning and development in that business context to make an impact is, I think, what I really want to share with you. First, the most important thing from a learning organization is to create enablers. If you do not have the enablers, then all the talk about learning and development becomes, I think, we use the word learning and development, but it becomes mainly training. The basic essentials you need to provide to your employees so that they can be enabled to work there. So it is no longer learning and development. So from an enablers for learning organization, you do need to make a lot of investments. You need to have the right organization structure in place. Training department can't be a small department reporting to someone way down in an HR department. It has to have its rightful place in the organization. You need to use a lot of technology. If you want to reach out, we have, for example, in our company, 470 offices covering almost 900 towns spread across the country. If you are not investing in technology, or you're not using technology innovatively, the cost of that training can be humongous. How do you ensure that you can reach the maximum number of people at the least amount of cost. And I'll share some of the things at least we have done. There has to be a process for learning. You can't be just about training people. You have to sit back and really think about what is the process you use in the company to actually enhance learning in the organization. How that process is different at different levels in the organization. How that process is going to evolve over a period of time. You can't just say, oh, this is my process. You have to today decide 3 years, 5 years down the line, what am I really aiming for? And what is the process I'm putting in place to ensure what my targets are, what my objectives are for learning and development in the organization will evolve. Am I putting the right process in place to get there? What is not written here? Governance mechanisms are the one. How you're ensuring that you have a governance mechanism in place to put all these things together. But the most important point which is missing here, and the reason I did not mention it here, is the culture. You know, when you do surveys, when you ask people, what do you want from the organization? Especially when we do a peer review process. There are about 175 people who are in our organization. So I guess top 175 people in the company. We go through a very detailed peer review process. And when you ask in that review process, the employees, what do they really want from the organization? One of the things which figures right up there is training. I want the organization to train me, enhance my skill sets. So that's the demand. When you actually want to provide them those skill sets, they're very, very hesitant to come to the table and actually undergo that training. It's very, very difficult. I mean, they will find all kinds of excuses. The people who have to be trained, the managers, that no, today is not the right time to train. They're busy. They're going and trying to get business for us. I'm sure all of you who actually come from the learning and development organization have faced that on a day-to-day basis. And what do you have to do as an enabler to change that culture or that mindset that actually they want to embrace training? Because I think one of the most difficult things in terms of an enabler. I remember, our regulator is very, very active, and so, because they keep changing the rules, we have to keep launching new products. So we have practically every month or every 15 days a new product, which we launch in the marketplace. And I kept telling my head of learning that, I want everyone in this company to be trained on those products. And we do launch the training online. So, you can go online, there is a knowledge online session which you can go through, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes. And then there is an assessment process you have to go through. It's an open book, so it's not a problem. It took almost 1 year for him to be convinced that everyone in the organization has to go through the training, and if within a defined time period they don't go through the training, their access to the company is stopped. It took 1 year for me to convince him. He got convinced. And believe me, once we did that, after 1 or 2 months, I started hearing a different kind of conversation in the organization, especially at my executive committee level, where they started discussing the nuances of what was there in that product training. Why that question was wrong, or maybe not appropriately worded. Why, maybe we should change some of the questions we are asking. It was a different conversation. It really basically told me that they never took that training. And when they were forced, they did. But that's not the right way to change the culture. I mean, that's policing. Policing can get you that far. Actually, if you really want to change the culture, the people should embrace. And that's the biggest struggle I have. We have done mentoring in the organization. The mentees never come to the table. First session, very good. Second session, half them drop out. By the third session, most of the mentees are no longer there. So that's the biggest, I think, hurdle all of us face. And if I talk about enablers, from a CEO's role perspective, if the CEO does not own the learning agenda, I think there is no hope for the learning organization. The CEO has to own the agenda. And not only own the agenda, they have to drive the learning culture from the top and make an example of it. So they have to walk the talk. Participate actively in ensuring that learning is part of your agenda, ensuring that they get the rightful place when organization initiatives or objectives are being talked about. Push the learning organization to ensure that they are seen as someone who are bringing a differentiation to the organization. Talk it up, ensure you're walking it, and ensure that the executive team is also following that path. It can't be that yes, in the board you're asked the question, how much you're spending on training, and you say, yeah, this is a training line, this is the money I spent, it has gone from last year, so I'm doing a great job. Doesn't work. I'll talk about how we have at least changed from an HDFC Life perspective, and maybe that will give you some insights on what is going on. Now, this was a study which was done in 2009 and I think further embellished in March 2012. We currently, as I'm talking about the industry broadly, I'm not necessarily talking about HDFC Life, we currently measure mainly inputs. What is the activity? What is the cost of providing the training? What is the reaction? And all of us are very proud about the fact that the moment the training is over, we get great ratings. And we're doing such a great job because the score is so good. I remember when I came to HDFC Life on a scale of 5, it was invariably more than 4.7. And you proudly put that up and say, I'm doing a great job. But if you look at the business context and what the CEO wants, what they're looking for is whatever you are teaching, is it being applied? Is there a business impact? Is there an ROI of this? Can I look at the amount of money which you're spending in training and learning and development, and can I link it to what is the return I'm getting on that investment? All very easy to say. I mean, obviously it's very easy for me to put up this slide and say that, great. But how do you actually create those measurement tools? Very, very difficult. How do I look at learning and actually measure that, yes, because of that learning, there was an incremental impact on the competency of the individual and actually led to, say, higher sales, or it led to more profits, or it led to reduction in costs. Very, very difficult to do that. And we have struggled with it. And it is a struggle on a day-to-day basis. So we have tried to do some different things, and I'll try to share that with you, and I'm not saying that the journey is over. Don't go on the data itself. What I'm really trying to show you here is that yes, if you look at the effectiveness, so there are 3 ways to measure it. One is obviously to look at effectiveness, second is to look at efficiency, third is to look at the output. Now there are some effectiveness measures we use, and there are, in insurance there are 4 or 5 channels: agency, direct, banker, customer relations is our customer relationship team. And here we're trying to measure what is the learner satisfaction index. Now it is invariably measured after the training is over, and it sounds all great. So if the only thing you're going to measure is that what is the satisfaction index, it seems that we have one of the best learning departments in the country. 99, 95, 99. I'm surprised there were some people who thought it was not satisfactory. But if you look at it in the, if you look at the level 1 feedback, that's one way to go at it, and level 2 feedback is on relevance and application. And even there, the numbers are very, very high. Maybe we're not giving good foods to the the facilitators, or some of them did not come across very well, but generally otherwise, the sample score is very, very good. If you look at the IPSAT score, which is what we measure once in a year, internal partner satisfaction score, there the numbers do tend to drop. So from 90, suddenly we drop to, they're one of the best, they are the number 1 department. Position is number 1 in the company, and we are measuring about 15 to 18 departments. So the learning and development department did score the number 1 position. But the overall score of satisfaction is only 66.6. So if you, on a yearly basis, you sit back and you're asking all the employees in the country to rate you, you're not scoring that high. The B2B score was 10.4%, and the satisfaction differential was about 48.5. So quite a wide variance in terms of, what people were rating the department as. If you go down on knowledge assessment score, so after the training was over, when we tested them on the knowledge they had acquired, again the scores were not great. I'm quite satisfied, but the knowledge which I have gained at the end of that particular training intervention I've gone through is not that good. Why should it be 90 plus is a question we have to ask ourselves. If you look at the efficiency measures, and we've given some data points, so we did, we have about 330 plus 32 managers, 330 trainers, 32 managers in our company. They did 18.7 lakhs worth hours of training. Online has gone from almost nothing to 4.61 lakhs. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, was all this training planned? Or was it based on someone raised the hand, some sales guy, and said, today I want this training done. Oh, by the way, I launched a product, I want this training done. How much of it was a planned intervention? How much of it was an unplanned intervention? I remember I was asking the training guys, okay, so do you have a 12-month training calendar available? or a 1-month training calendar? So today the answer which I'm giving is, I have a 3-month training calendar available. 12 months, yes, I have a broad idea, but it changes every day. Online has gone up because maybe we've introduced a lot of content online. We are forcing people to go through that content. How many of them actually sit in groups of 5? And then, they say, okay, this is the question which is appeared on my screen, what is the answer? And someone types in the answer. We are still to check it. So we are actually thinking of that we'll take a photograph of the person in terms of who's sitting in front of the PC. That is going on. They do not see the value of that training to do it themselves. They still believe it's something which they have to do to cross a milestone and move on from there. If you look at outcome measures, so how many have passed IDA exam? Well, in comparison, we had a plan for 2x in comparison to the people who are not trained. The number is 1.63. How many financial consultants who actually went through our training got activized in comparison to people who don't go through this training? We are doing better than target. We have things around, now our training department is actually signing up for how many people who go through an initial training intervention, how many of them after 3 months actually pass the first stage? 54%. And we had set a target of 55 to 60. On the direct side, which is another channel of ours, the number is actually much better. So gradually we are pushing I talked to you about the outcome measures, we are pushing our learning department to sign business outcome measures. We are saying that the fact that you did the input is the minimum job requirement, that's what you get your salary for. Your rating as an individual or as a department, or the variable payout which you will get will depend on signing up for business matrices which are same as that of the people who are actually taking the training. We've still got some distance to cover. But even there, what you gradually see is that initially what I saw was, yes, they signed up for the score, but then they excluded number of matrices, excluded number of people. So for example, what they did, and I'll share this openly with you, that in the stage gate 1, let's say 10% of people fell off because they decided not to stay with the company. They excluded that number from their calculation, which I discovered later on. I don't blame them because they're saying if they're gone, then how am I responsible for, ensuring that many pass? But I said, the fact that that whole experience was not good enough for them to stick around, you have to include it in your number. So it's a negotiation process. They have come from a very input-based organization to someone who's willing to, on their own, sign up for output. I told you we have 470 offices. We are, attrition rate in the insurance industry is very high at the lowest levels. We were only initially inducting all of them in the 470 offices. Now we have moved all our salespeople to be inducted at regional offices. It's not an easy task to make people come who are doing the job for the first time, not getting a very, very high salary to come to a regional office and get trained for 12 to 14 days. Not an easy proposition. Where I have put my foot down and refused to reimburse them to start with. I said, if you stick around for a certain period of time, only then the reimbursement will come. So you first pay from your pocket. It's not easy. But the learning organization has moved in terms of signing up for those business outcomes. If you were to ask me for the expectations one has as a CEO.
Hi, how are you?
One of the things we struggle with when we talk about how is learning having an impact is that we struggle with standards. I do believe that, like the report says, there should be common reporting standards for talent in the industry. I think all of us should get together and try to do that, because what you suffer from is the disconnect between the investment being made in learning and the business and the scorecard which is CEO is carrying. That's the biggest disconnect. And a lot of the learning people shy away from it is because it is not easy to demonstrate the impact of that change, which is a problem. Once you have the standards, you can benchmark against those standards. You need to ensure that you on your own are aligning your written scorecard. There is no point in standing in isolation. One day, especially in an economy of this kind, your head will get chopped. Because it's easy to chop. If I have to deliver a certain scorecard and the economy is not doing well, I will go and look for expenses which are not making a direct impact on my business today, where the impact is long term. I will chop. It's easy to chop. You know, ultimately, by the time the board realizes that it has a long-term impact, you know, things are a couple of years have passed. And you have to make the learning officer, you have to think, what is the differentiation you're bringing to the table? What is making you different? I actually asked my learning team, you know, I do regular reviews. If you were to call yourself a differentiator for HDFC Life, please write down for me what those differentiators would be. I want you to write it down on a piece of paper. That if you were to be called that, you know, learning and development is a differentiator for HDFC Standard Life. HDFC Standard Life stands for learning and development, doing it differently. What is the difference? And sometimes you struggle with it. How will you become different? You can't become different by saying, oh, I do a lot of learning and development, I do a lot of training. That doesn't work. Ultimately, the only way you'll become a differentiator is where you can demonstrate that business impact. That because the way I train them, because the whole process is so different, because the whole experience is so different, that people can actually see the business impact, they can see the competency impact, and when these people go out in the marketplace, people can feel and touch that difference in the employees who are coming out of HDFC Life. So, what are some of the differences could be? Am I able to attract, retain, and create leaders? Are people from HDFC Life the kind of employees people vie for? They get a guy from there, they can be up and running very, very quickly. So, for example, I talked to you about the potential review process development. Every year we make our AVPs and VPs actually write a document of 3 or 4 pages. We want their L1 to review that particular document. Then a panel of the senior most people in the company, including me, sit down and discuss each of those 170 employees for half an hour each week. What have they done well, what have they not? So obviously we have the appraisals, but this is all about the soft factors. What are they doing well, what are they not doing well? Do they need are there some skill sets which are missing? Can we do some interventions? What is the feedback we need to give this individual? Do we expect this guy to get promoted in the next 12 months, or he needs to stay in job? Or do we need to give a different perspective to this individual? Should we change that job or profile of the job? In some cases, we give them feedback that I think your time is coming up. Then, after we have gone through this, we look at potential positions which are available in the organization where some of these individuals will be moved. It's a pretty long process, it takes about 4 months. After that, we give individual feedback to each of those employees, and I personally participate. The number is growing every day, but you personally participate to ensure that they realize that this feedback is coming from the top of the company. We have a management training program. We're in an economy which is not doing well. I'm of the firm belief that we need to be hiring 50, 60. That's what we can afford. That's what I think an organization of our size needs. 50 to 60 MBAs every year. Doesn't matter whether we are doing well or not, because they are the middle management and the top management of the future. So we have a very, very detailed program for the management trainings. We have been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years. Initially, only some departments are accepting them, the sales guys didn't want them, but gradually I'm seeing that almost every department is raising a hand and asking for the management trainings. We have leadership programs now, we gradually developed them. Now we are working with ISB, so for a certain level we have leadership programs. There is a huge requirement in the insurance industry not only to attract but retain distributors. It's not about only training your employees, but training our distributors. So we have actually created a technology platform whereby we can actually train our distributors in a very seamless way. I've invested a lot of money for it. Learning management systems, I talked about that, online, social media, and so on and so forth. We are actually running specific strategic initiatives where the learning department has been charged and tasked to ensure to make an impact on specific strategic initiatives. They're also involved in facilitating organization-wide training. We are going through a huge technology transformation exercise. And one of the things which the learning department is doing is how do I ensure that as new things are introduced in our technology transformation exercise, that the change is seamless. How do we create content which can actually help employees embrace this change in technology in a seamless fashion? Last but not the least, we have to ensure regulatory compliance. And things around ethics and integrity and so on and so forth. I'm told I'm running out of time, so based on that signal, let me just say thank you.